By dawn, their bodies were dust and fire. Dylan's legs had gone rubbery, his tongue thick and useless in his mouth. Mara's wound had reopened. Her sleeve was dark with blood. Sam vomited twice while stringing from his chin, but kept running. They crested a ridge and saw it. A stretch of highway, cracked and faded, cutting through the desert like a scar. And beyond it, a cluster of buildings, low and blocky, shimmering in the heat. "Town," Dylan croaked. His voice was nothing but gravel. Mara squinted, or what's left of one. Sam didn't wait. He lurched forward, nearly falling face first into the dirt. Doesn't matter. Anything's better than this. But Dylan knew better. He knew the truth gnawing at the back of his skull. The Whistleman was driving them there on purpose, herding them into a pen. The town was a ruin like everything else. A single main street, lined with hollow shells of buildings. A diner, a laundromat, a school whose windows had all been punched out. Dust coated everything in thick blankets, as if the desert itself was swallowing it piece by piece. But it wasn't empty. They saw the signs right away. Shredded clothing nailed to the diner's doorframe. Bleached bones arranged in circles in the street. A child's doll hanging by its neck from a lamppost. Madame Muterid, Jesus. Sam whispered, "It's them." Dylan didn't answer. He just tightened his grip on the rifle and pushed forward. The whistle sounded again, closer now. From the shadows of the laundromat, figures emerged. Not the dead. Not exactly. They were alive, or had been once, their mouths sewn shut with black thread, their eyes wide and empty. Their skin was sunburned raw, peeling in strips. They moved slow, deliberate, their heads tilted to the side as if listening to something only they could hear. Mara raised her machete. Back! Back now! But the whistle came again, and the stitched mouths moved forward, surrounding them in silence. Sam's bat clattered to the pavement. "I told you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I told you he's the future." "Shut the fuck up," Mara hissed. Dylan lifted the rifle. His hands shook. There were too many, 6, maybe 7, and more shadows moving in the alleys. The stitched mouths didn't attack. They just waited, hurting them further like the dead had done all night. The air grew heavy. The sun climbed higher. And then, from the school, he came. The Whistleman. He stepped into the light, tall and thin, dressed in rags that hung from his frame like molted skin. His hair was the color of ash, his eyes pale, his lips split and bleeding from the whistle clamped between his teeth. He lowered it, and the silence that followed was worse than the sound. "You made it," he said, his voice soft, almost tender. "I knew you would." Mara spat at the dirt. "Go to hell." He smiled. "We're already there." His stitched followers swayed behind him, their blank eyes fixed on nothing. The dead moaned in the distance, circling the outskirts of the town like wolves. Dylan's throat closed. "Why us?" "Because you're still fighting," the Whistleman said. "And fighters make the best herd. You run. You struggle. You resist. It makes the flesh sweeter in the end." Mara raised her machete. "Come closer. I'll show you resistance." But the Whistleman only smiled wider. "You misunderstand. I don't want you dead. Not yet. I want you to join. To see." He gestured to the stitched ones. They gave themselves willingly. They are free from hunger, free from thirst, free from choice. Sam stepped forward, trembling. I'll join." Mara whirled on him. "What the fuck are you saying?" Sam's face was pale, his lips cracked, his eyes wild. "He's right, Mara. We're dying out here. Starving. Burning. He can save us." Dylan felt the world tilt, felt the ground sway under his feet. "Sam, don't." But Sam was already moving, dropping his bat, raising his hands. "Please," he begged. "Please take me." The Whistleman's smile split wider. Mara screamed, "You son of a bitch." The dead howled from the edges of town, echoing, answering the Whistleman's grin. Dylan raised the rifle, finger tightening on the trigger. His eyes darted between Mara, Sam, and the pale man who wanted to herd them into oblivion. The sun blazed overhead, merciless. The desert held its breath, and Dylan knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that whatever choice he made next would shatter them forever. Chapter 7, Splinters. Dylan didn't mean to pull the trigger. The shot cracked anyway, shattering the silence. The bullet slammed into the dirt inches from the whistleman's bare feet, spraying grit against his shins. The pale man didn't flinch. He just tilted his head, bird-like, and smiled wider. Mara was the first to move. She lunged, machete flashing in the harsh sunlight. The stitched mouths shifted as one, intercepting her, their bodies jerking in strange unison. Her blade sank into the chest of the first. He didn't scream, couldn't scream, just collapsed in a heap of blood and dust. Another swayed forward, clawed hands grabbing for her hair. Mara hacked again, snarling, teeth bared. Sam shrieked, "Stop! Don't hurt them!" He ran forward, pushing Mara back with both hands. She stumbled, fury blazing in her eyes. "What the fuck are you doing?" Sam's face twisted, sweat pouring down his temples. "They're not the enemy." "The hell they aren't." Mara raised her blade again, but the whistleman raised a hand, and his stitched mouths froze. Like puppets with cut strings, the pale man stepped closer, his feet silent on the cracked asphalt. His voice was calm, soothing, as if speaking to frightened children. "You've been running for so long," he said. "And for what? Hunger, thirst, fear. Let it end. Give yourselves to me. To us." His pale eyes shifted to Sam. "This one understands." Sam's chest heaved. He dropped to his knees in the dust. "Please. I'll do anything." Mara's voice broke, sharp as glass. "You weak, stupid son of a bitch." She started toward him, but Dylan grabbed her arm. "Stop." His voice was hoarse. "Not now." She ripped free, glaring at him. "Not now. He's selling us out." Dylan's hands shook around the rifle. The sun seared the back of his neck, sweat stinging his eyes. His mind raced. He wanted to kill the whistleman, to put a bullet through that smug grin. But the stitched ones were too many, and the dead still circled the outskirts. They'd never make it. The pale man knelt in front of Sam, placed a long, thin hand on his head, almost tender. "You'll be remade," he whispered. "You'll never hunger again." Sam sobbed. "Yes, please, do it." The whistleman stood and gestured. Two stitched mouths stepped forward, lifting Sam to his feet with surprising gentleness. They began leading him toward the schoolhouse, the sun glaring on the broken glass in its windows. Mara shook with rage, her machete trembling in her grip. "We can't let them take him." Dylan's stomach twisted. "He chose it, Mara. Fuck his choice. He's ours." "He's..." Her voice cracked, and Dylan saw the raw truth beneath her fury, grief. She loved him in some broken, bitter way. The whistleman turned back, pale eyes on them. "Come with him. Don't waste yourselves in the dust." Dylan raised the rifle again, teeth gritted. "You don't own us." The pale man's smile never wavered. "Not yet." A sound split the air, another whistle, shrill and cutting. The dead moved. From the edges of the town they surged, staggering but sure, drawn into the streets. Their moans rose, filling the hot air, echoing against broken walls. Mara grabbed Dylan's sleeve. "We have to go. Now." Dylan's throat closed. Sam was vanishing into the schoolhouse doors, swallowed by shadows. He had to choose. They ran. Through the diner, out the back door, into the heat. The dead were already spilling into the alleys, their bodies crashing against broken cars, their hands reaching, clawing. Mara hacked and shoved. Dylan fired blind shots over his shoulder, each recoil rattling his bones. They burst into an empty lot behind the laundromat, lungs searing, hearts hammering. The sun sat high and merciless. No shade, no cover. Dylan stumbled, fell to his knees while rising in his throat. Mara yanked him up by the collar. "Moo!" The dead poured into the lot, dozens of them, eyes blank, jaws gnashing. The whistle shrieked again, guiding them. Dylan and Mara ducked into the skeleton of a church. Its steeple collapsed, its walls burned black. Inside, the air was thick with ash and rot. They collapsed against the altar, gasping. Dylan's rifle clicked empty. Mara's arm bled freely now, dripping down to her fingertips. Outside, the moans swelled. The dead pressed against the doors, their fists pounding, their voices a chorus of hunger. Mara pressed her forehead against the cool stone. We should have killed him. Dylan said nothing. His mind was full of Sam's face, broken and begging, swallowed by shadows. The whistle blew again, longer this time, and Dylan felt it in his bones. Not a command, but a promise. They weren't escaping. Not really. They were being given a head start. That night, huddled in the dark, they listened to the dead shuffle past. Mara whispered, "He'll be one of them now." Dylan closed his eyes. No, worse. And in the silence that followed, the desert heat pressed down, unforgiving, and the sound of the whistle lingered like a nail driven into their skulls. Chapter 8, The Hollow School. By morning, the church stank of rot. Dylan woke to the sound of flies, thick clouds of them buzzing over the altar. Something had bloated in the walls overnight, and the heat had baked it open. He gagged, pulled his shirt over his nose, trying not to think about meat in the sun. Mara sat with her back to a shattered pew, machete across her knees, eyes red and sleepless. "They're close," she said flatly. "Yeah." His voice was dry gravel. Neither of them spoke Sam's name. When they crept out, the town was a graveyard. No wind, no birds, just the heat pressing down like a hand on the skull. The dead were gone for now. Only a trail of footprints in the dust, dozens of them, all leading the same way. East, toward the schoolhouse. Mara spat. "That's where he is." Dylan adjusted the empty rifle on his shoulder. And him, the whistle man, even thinking the name felt dangerous, like whispering into a keyhole with something listening on the other side. Mara stood. "Then that's where we go." The schoolhouse loomed at the end of the street. Its windows were jagged mouths, its doors hanging crooked on rusted hinges. The playground was littered with bones, bleached white by years of sun. A swing moved lazily back and forth, though there was no wind. Dylan's stomach turned. Inside, it was worse. The air was damp, wrong, not desert air at all, but heavy, wet like a basement that hadn't breathed in years. Hallways gaped in both directions, lined with lockers streaked in rust. A faint glow came from the gymnasium, pulsing like a heartbeat. Mara whispered, "He's in there." And then they heard it. A voice. Not the whistle. Not the shriek that pulled at the bones. But a voice, low and droning, weaving through the halls like smoke. They couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm was there. Prayer or chant. They followed it. The gym doors were propped open with broken desks. Light spilled out, the color of fire and blood. Inside, the bleachers were packed. Not with children, not anymore, but with stitched mouths, dozens upon dozens, sitting in eerie stillness. Their eyes followed Dylan and Mara as they stepped inside, every head turning in perfect unison. At the center of the basketball court stood the whistle man. And beside him, Sam. Dylan's breath hitched. Sam was alive, but not the same. His mouth was stitched, black thread cutting into his skin. His eyes were wide and unblinking, staring at nothing. He stood stiff and trembling, like a puppet waiting for strings. Mara made a sound, half sob, half snarl. "No, no." The whistle man smiled. "He asked for this. He begged for it. You should be proud of him." "You sick fuck," Mara spat. The pale man raised his whistle. "Do you see now? He is free, and you can be too." Dylan's fists clenched. "That's not freedom." The pale man's smile deepened. "It's the only freedom left." He blew the whistle. It wasn't like before. Not a hurting note. Not a command. This one was lower, drawn out, almost mournful. The stitched mouths on the bleachers began to sway. Their bodies rocked side to side, slow like grass in the wind. The sound that filled the gym wasn't moaning, wasn't screaming. It was humming. Dozens of throats vibrating together, muffled by their sealed lips. A hymn. The whistle man stretched out his arms. The world out there is dead. Here there is order. Here there is peace. Join or perish in the dust. Mara raised her machete, her voice raw. I'll never join you. The stitched ones hummed louder, a rising chorus. Sam turned his head at last, his thread-pulled mouth stretching into something that was almost a smile. The dead poured into the gym. They came through side doors, windows, vents, moving as one, their jaws working, their hands clawing. But they didn't attack Dylan and Mara. Not yet. They stood, encircling, hemming them in, waiting for the signal. The whistle man lowered the whistle. His pale eyes burned. You will join, he whispered. Mara screamed and charged. Her blade swung for his throat, but a stitched mouth leapt between them, her machete sinking into its ribs. Dylan fired the rifle, empty click echoing uselessly. The dead closed in, the hymn rattling the air, the heat suffocating. And as Mara fought, Dylan understood the terrible truth. The whistle man wasn't just hurting. He was building a congregation, and they were standing at the altar. Chapter 9, the sermon. They didn't die right away. That was the cruelest part. The stitched mouths swarmed them, dozens of pale hands dragging, clawing. Dylan swung his rifle like a club, cracked one in the skull, felt bone give way. Mara screamed curses, her machete painting arcs of red through the air. But there were too many. Hands caught Dylan's arms, forced him down, his face mashed into the splintered cord. He tasted blood and dust, his own breath bouncing hot back at him. Mara's voice cut the air, shrill with rage and terror. Then a thud silenced her. The whistle blew once. Everything froze. The stitched ones parted, dragging Dylan and Mara to their knees in the center of the gym. Their weapons were gone. The circle of dead tightened. Above them, on the court where children once played ball, the whistle man stood with his pale smile. Welcome, he said. Sam stood at his side. His eyes were open but empty, pupils wide in the gym's strange red glow. His stitched mouth dripped a little blood where the thread dug deep. He swayed slightly, like a child fighting sleep. Mara's voice was shredded with fury. What did you do to him? The pale man tilted his head. I gave him rest. He begged for it. Bullshit. She spat blood into the floor. You gutted him, you freak. The whistle man only smiled wider. He raised one long-fingered hand, and the hymn began again. The stitched mouths rocked and hummed, their bodies vibrating with the sound. The gym became a throbbing chamber of noise, suffocating, thick, endless. Dylan's stomach rolled. He wanted to scream, just to cut through it, but his throat locked. The pale man spread his arms. This is the world now. Not the chaos outside, not the hunger, not the madness. Here there's structure. Here, there's a place for all. He looked down at Dylan. You are weary. You've carried death on your shoulders so long it has bent you. Why keep carrying it? Why fight? Dylan lifted his head, sweat stinging his eyes. Because I'm not yours. The pale man's smile did not falter. You all will be. A signal. The stitched mouths dragged Mara forward, her heels scraping against the painted floor. She fought like a cornered animal, jerking, twisting, spitting. Let go of me. They hauled her to the bleachers and pinned her down. Two held her arms to her legs. Another pressed a filthy hand over her mouth. She thrashed and bucked, muffled screams filling the gym. The whistle man knelt beside her, slow, deliberate. From the folds of his coat, he pulled a needle, long, black, glinting in the red glow. Thread dangled from it like a vein. Dylan's chest seized. No! The pale man glanced at him, eyes like polished bone. You'll see, it is not death. It is transformation. And when she rises, She will thank me. Mara writhed harder, her screams wet with terror now, pure, unbroken. The needle dipped toward her lips. Dylan snapped. He tore against the hands holding him, muscles screaming, his skull pounding within him. One broke free, then another. He surged to his feet, rammed his shoulder into the stitched mouth gripping him, felt ribs crack. He staggered toward Mara, throat raw with a roar. The rifle was gone, the machete gone. His fists were all that remained. The whistleman looked up, mildly amused. "Ah, spirit." Dylan swung. His fist smashed the pale man's jaw, snapping his head back. For the first time, the smile faltered. The hymn stopped. The stitched mouths froze, their heads turning in eerie unison, staring. The pale man touched his chin, blood welling where Dylan's knuckles split the skin. Slowly, he licked it from his fingers, and then he laughed. The whistle shrieked. Pain ripped through Dylan's skull, like glass driven into his ears. He staggered, fell to one knee. Mara thrashed harder, muffled by the hands, choking her down. The dead surged. Dozens piled on Dylan, crushing him, dragging him back, his body pinned under a sea of rotting flesh. Hands clamped his wrists, his ankles, his throat. The air reeked of bile and rot. Through the press of bodies, Dylan saw Mara's eyes. Wild, burning, pleading. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The whistle blew again. Darkness took him. When he woke, he was in classroom. The windows were covered with boards. The air stank of mildew and blood. He was tied to a child's desk with strips of leather, wrists raw from struggling. In the corner, Sam stood motionless, stitched mouth glistening, head cocked like a doll. Mara was across the room, bound the same way, her eyes swollen, her lips split. But her mouth was still her own. For now. The whistle man stood at the chalkboard, scrawling something across it in jagged white letters. The words were gibberish, a language Dylan's brain rejected. The pale man turned, chalk dust clinging to his fingers. "You will sit in my class," he said softly. "You will learn." He tapped the board with the chalk. "And when the lesson is over, you will join." The heat pressed in. The boards leaked thin blades of sunlight, hot and sharp, striping the floor. Dylan's tongue was thick, his throat dry as bone. The sound of humming drifted through the walls, endless, eternal. Mara's voice was a whisper, hoarse and frayed. "Dylan," he met her eyes. "We can't let him," she swallowed, blood on her teeth. "Kill me before they stitch me. Promise me." Dylan's heart broke in silence. The whistle man smiled at the exchange, as though pleased, and he raised the needle again. Chapter 10. Ashes of the Herd. The classroom was silent, the kind of silence that suffocates, the kind that drags your own heartbeat into its mouth. Dylan's wrists throbbed where the leather had bitten into his skin. Mara's eyes glimmered with fury and fear, still raw from the whistled lesson, still her own mouth intact. Sam sat across the room, a stitch-mouthed statue, obedient blank. The whistle man stood at the front, long needle in hand, pale eyes gleaming with calm authority. "You will join," he whispered, "or be remade." Dylan's mind snapped. He acted before thought. Mara's eyes widened as he slammed his shoulder against the desk, snapping the leather bindings. The wood splintered under his weight. He grabbed the nearest chalkboard ruler, jagged, thick, and swung at the pale man. The needles skittered across the floor. The whistle shrieked. The stitch mouths lurched forward, but Dylan wasn't waiting. He kicked one back, letting it crash into the boards, then grabbed Mara's hand. "Run," he shouted. They barreled into the hallway. The dead outside the gym didn't follow. Not yet, but the stitched ones poured after them, swaying in unison, humming that low, suffocating chorus. The heat outside hit them like a furnace. Sunlight sliced through broken windows, blinding, scorching. Dylan grabbed a fallen chain from the playground near the school. He swung it, smashing the first stitched one that lunged at them. Mara stabbed with a machete, cutting a swath through their circle. They fought through the playground, past rusted swings and bleached bones, and into the street. The whistle shrieked again. The dead surged. Not the stitched ones. The real dead, drawn from the desert, rising from cracks in the asphalt from ruined alleyways. The hymn was gone. Now it was chaos. Dylan and Mara ran, weaving through corpses, bodies collapsing behind them, the heat wrapping around their sweat-soaked skin like iron bands. They reached a gas station at the end of the street. Rusted pumps stood like tombstones. Dylan yanked a hose from one and swung it at a stitched one that leapt at Mara. "Hold on," he yelled, yanking open a door. The station's interior was a tomb of glass and dust, but it offered cover. Inside, Dylan spotted a kerosene lamp on the counter. Mara grabbed it, tipping it toward the dead pressing in from the windows. Dylan swung a lighter. Flame bloomed. Fire licked the pumps outside, catching spilled gasoline, spreading faster than they could think. The stitched one screamed, or tried to, muffled by black thread, flailing as flames licked their bodies. The dead shrieked in answer, some retreating, some stumbling into fire. The whistle man appeared outside, calm amid the chaos, his pale eyes glinting. He raised the whistle. The dead froze. The stitched ones turned, disoriented, smoke curling from their clothing. Dylan and Mara seized the moment. They ran out a side alley, legs pumping, lungs burning. Behind them, the town was a furnace, the gym and schoolhouse glowing in the heat, the whistle shrieking a high, piercing note that would haunt them forever. They ran until night fell. The desert stretched, endless, black under a cold moon. Dylan collapsed against a rock, chest heaving. Mara sat beside him, machete at her side, blood and soot streaking her skin. "They're gone," she whispered. "For now," Dylan said. He didn't look back. Sam, he'd been taken, or changed, or worse. Dylan couldn't bear to think of him stitched and silent, a puppet in the whistle man's hands. Mara's hand found his. She squeezed tight. "We made it," she said. But Dylan knew better. The desert didn't forgive. The whistle man didn't forgive. And out there, the stitched and the dead still roamed, waiting for the next note, the next herd. The sun rose the next morning, hot and brutal, over scorched earth. Dylan and Mara walked east, footprints trailing behind them like thin scars. Their mouths were dry, their skin raw, their hearts hammering. They were alive, yes, but the desert had taken pieces of them that would never grow back. And somewhere, far ahead, the whistle shrieked again. A signal, a call, a promise. The world wasn't done yet. But for now, they survived. And survival, in the Texas heat, was the only victory that mattered.